The story begins on a beautiful Caribbean sea where a happy family is enjoying a vacation on their yacht. Julia, the mother, makes the decision to go swimming. She floats calmly at first, but then something strange touches her leg. She looks around and sees nothing, so she thinks it's just her imagination. She experiences it once more intensely a few seconds later. As the fear grows, Julia swims swiftly back toward the yacht. Suddenly, something grabs her leg and pulls. Panic takes over as she screams for help, but no one notices. Her daughter Cassie is wearing headphones and can't hear her. Her husband Tom and son Ben are busy fishing and don't see what's happening. Julia struggles to stay above the water, but it's getting harder to yell as waves splashes into her mouth. Finally, Tom realizes Julia is missing. He looks around and spots her fighting in the water. He calls the kids to move the yacht closer and jumps in without hesitation. Tom reaches, Julia holds her up and swims back to the boat. Cassie and Ben help pull them aboard. Julia is shaking and out of breath. She can't explain what happened and guesses it was just a strong current, though she isn't sure. That night, the family tries to relax and celebrate Ben's birthday with gifts and cake. Later, Cassie steps outside to talk to her boyfriend on a video call. He shows her the sky over his city, where huge black storm clouds are rolling in. Thunder rumbles in the background. Before Cassie can say anything, the video freezes and glitches, leaving her staring at the dark, stormy sky. Cassie quickly returns inside to inform all of them about the odd video call, but Tom denies it, saying that they are most likely simply too far away from land to receive a good signal. A powerful rumbling sound echoes across the sea before they can continue their conversation. They all walk outdoors out of curiosity to see a massive group of whales flowing around a yacht. Tom explains that whales usually travel by following the Earth's magnetic field. But when big storms mess with those signals, the whales can get confused and end up following the storms instead, sometimes even toward the coast. The yacht suddenly jolts hard, making Ben lose his balance and fall. Tom immediately worries something might have hit the boat. He grabs his gear and dives into the water to check for damage. A few moments later, Tom resurfaces with a bleeding cut on his shoulder. Julia quickly brings him aboard and starts cleaning and stitching the wound. Tom tells them he felt something moving behind him while he was underwater. When he turned around, he thinks he got caught by the blades, but whatever was down there was huge, too big to see clearly. Julia keeps trying the yacht's radio while Cassie searches for a phone signal, but nothing works. The air grows heavy with silence until Cassie suddenly jumps, only to realize it's just Ben, wearing a mask and trying to scare her. At last, Julia hears a faint voice on the radio, but the words are jumbled and unintelligible. Tom says that they have enough food and water for around 4 days in an attempt to keep everyone calm. At this point, their only option is to wait and hope that a passing fishing boat would see them in time. The family suddenly hears an odd noise, and the radar detects up something close. As they walk outside, they are surprised to see multiple meteorites crashing into the Earth, causing massive impacts. When a meteorite crashes in the nearby ocean, Tom quickly moves the yacht to get it moving again. Another meteorite crashes into the area as the engine tries to continue forward. In fear, they hangs to one another, and Tom realizes the flaming balls aren't meteorites but satellites. Ben then shows that there is smoke coming from the yacht. Tom checks and finds that the engine is burned out. The family hides inside as the wind starts to pick up. Ben falls again and suffers injuries as the yacht begins to shake. Tom fights the wind as the waves smash against the yacht to get the life jackets from a box outside to give it to them. Just as he gets inside, the power cuts out completely, plunging the cabin into darkness. Tom opens the power box and presses the emergency button. The lights flicker back. Ben notices blood dripping from Julia's nose, and Julia starts to feel lightheaded. Cassie runs to the sink, overwhelmed with nausea. Tom keeps trying to call for help on the radio, but there's only static. Suddenly, a piercing, high-pitched noise echoes across the sea. The wind roars even louder, rattling the yacht. As the storm rages, Tom lights a flare, its bright glow cutting through the darkness. The next morning, the family slowly wakes up, amazed that they're still alive. The storm has passed, but the yacht is wrecked. Pieces of equipment are broken and the parts railing are twisted. When they step outside, the sight leaves them speechless. The endless blue sea is gone. In every direction, there's nothing but dry land and cracked earth. The yacht now sits stranded in the middle of what used to be the ocean. Cassie tries to find a phone signal, but there's nothing. Ben plays quietly with 2 dead crabs he finds nearby. Tom checks the compass and notices something shocking: the magnetic poles have reversed. He explains that the last time this happened was more than 700,000 years ago. The weight of the situation finally hits Cassie. Thinking about her boyfriend and the world they left behind, she breaks down crying and locks herself away, pushing Julia away when her mother tries to comfort her. Meanwhile, Julia and Tom check through what little food and water survived the crash. Ben ties his leftover birthday balloons to a rock, hoping that someone might see them and realize they're not alone. Tom keeps trying the yacht's radio and finally hears a faint voice. It's a man named Now, the captain of a submarine. Now explains that his vessel also ended up stuck on land. He confirms Tom's suspicion that the magnetic poles have reversed. Now hasn't found any other survivors and most communication systems are down. His advice is clear that the family needs to climb to higher ground as fast as possible. Nao also reveals that his partner died in the crash and his submarine only has room for 3 people. Julia and Tom beg him to save their children. Nao agrees and gives them his exact coordinates. The The following morning, while the family were gathering their supplies, Tom noticed some movement close by. It turned out to be an injured man limping toward them, holding a crude harpoon, with his dog barking constantly. Tom walked over and handed him a bottle of water, but the man spoke a language Tom couldn't understand. After drinking, the stranger suddenly smashed the bottle against Tom and kicked him in the face. Julia rushed over in fear, but by then the man had already driven the harpoon into Tom's stomach. Tom twitched in pain for a few moments before the stranger also slit his throat. The man then turned his attention to Julia. He hurled the harpoon at her, cutting her shoulder, but she managed to escape back to the yacht. Once inside, she told her kids to lock the doors and handed them the flare gun. Julia armed herself with a knife and stayed in the bathroom. Before long, the stranger forced his way into the yacht, grabbed some food, and searched every corner. When he pushed into the bathroom, Julia slipped away through a hole in the wall. She tried sneaking off, but the dog spotted her and attacked. With no choice left, she killed it using the knife. The man ran out after hearing the dog's cries, only to find its body, which sent him into an emotional breakdown. Julia used the distraction to climb back in through a broken window, but the man caught her and punched her down. As he dragged her, she kicked him off, though he stepped hard on her wrist, making her drop the knife. He then yanked her by the hair, smashed her face into the floor, and shoved her on the sofa while choking her. The kids who had been watching the whole time couldn't take it anymore. Cassie fired the flare gun at the man, setting the yacht on fire. While the children ran outside, Julia kicked the man away again, quickly grabbed the map and their bags and escaped. Together with her kids, she said goodbye to Tom's body before they left in tears. The man stumbled out as the yacht exploded, forcing the family to run once more. Later on, they stopped near a waterfall to rest. Cassie asked if the balloons they had released earlier were the reason the man had found them, which made Ben feel guilty. Julia comforted her son, telling him it wasn't his fault, and reminded them that they couldn't slow down because their pursuer was still out there. At a nearby pond, Ben was fascinated by a dead hammerhead shark lying there. But Julia spotted the stranger closing in again. They sprinted off, and while heading down a dune, they nearly ran straight into toxic waste, forcing them to go around it carefully. After a while, it looked like they had finally shaken him off. As they continued their journey, they kept seeing strange things stuck in the ground, where huge dead sea animals and piles of plastic that had once been at the bottom of the ocean. The family keeps walking across the dry land until they stumble on the wreck of a crashed airplane. A sudden noise makes them jump, but it's only a bunch of birds flying out from the wreckage. After calming down, they decide to use the plane as shelter for the night. Inside, they share a small meal. Julia finds a family photo hidden inside Tom's jacket, which brings her to tears. Cassie, wanting to hear something comforting, asks how her parents first met. Julia tells her the story. Tom came into the hospital where she worked, and even though he was her patient, he won her over with flowers and a poem. That night, Cassie sneaks outside to relieve herself. Out of nowhere, the limping stranger appears and grabs at her. Julia rushes out and tackles him, letting out all her grief and anger. She stabs him over and over until Cassie pulls her away and hugs her to calm her down. By morning, the man's corpse is crawling with bugs. Around it, Julia notices strange claw marks, a sign some other animal has been lurking nearby. The family decides to leave. After they're gone, crabs begin to crawl out of the man's mouth. Later, Julia and Cassie stop to look at the map, but Ben keeps walking. Thirsty and tired, he pushes his face into a shallow pond to drink. Julia pulls him back and scolds him, warning that the water could be poisoned. The sun beats down on them as they keep walking. Ben begins to feel dizzy. Luckily, they find a pile of old chairs, and Julia and Cassie use them to throw together a quick shelter. Julia gives Ben an injection and tells the kids they'll stay there overnight. The next morning, Julia wakes up to a strange rustling sound. She steps outside and sees a swarm of crabs heading their way. She runs back, shakes the kids awake, and they all sprint off in a panic. Not far away, they spot a massive cargo ship stranded on the ground. They hurry toward it and find 3 crew members still alive. A woman wants to help them, but the 2 men refuse. Julia hides her kids inside a container and helps them climb to the top as the crabs close in. She tries to climb too, but the crabs latch onto her leg. Ben and Cassie grab her arms and pull her up before she's dragged under. The swarm breaks into the ship through a hole. Gunfire blasts as the crew tries to fight them off, but it's useless. The crabs overwhelm them. 2 men are torn apart, and the last survivor is dragged down screaming. When it's over, Julia ties up her injured leg, but soon she faints from exhaustion. Hours later, she wakes to a sandstorm raging around her and realizes her children are gone. She panics, grabs a weapon from the dead woman, and calls out their names. Cassie runs back after hearing her voice. She explains that she and Ben went searching for help but didn't find anyone. Moments later, Ben appears and shows them an open container where they can rest for a while. Julia takes Tom's lighter and burns her wound shut. The pain is unbearable, but it stops the bleeding. When the storm finally ends, the family searches nearby containers and finds a stash of water bottles. They also check the dead crew members and recover a radio and a gun. Julia calls Now and tells him she lost the map. Now replies that he's been attacked by strange deep-sea creatures, so he warns the family that his instruments show the ocean will return much faster than expected, maybe just a few hours left. Now fires a flare and the family begins walking toward his location. After a long journey, they finally spot the submarine, but a giant rocky cliff blocks the way. As they climb, the ground shakes and rocks tumble down, causing a landslide. Julia shoves her kids to safety just before the rocks seal her off. A wall of stone now stands between them. Julia yells for her kids to keep moving without her, but Cassie refuses. The two argue until Julia promises she'll catch up later. With tears in her eyes, Cassie finally pulls Ben away, and they continue climbing toward the submarine. They find Now badly wounded and bleeding. He tells them he won't survive, so they should take the submarine. Realizing this means there's room for one more, Cassie runs back to find her mom. Meanwhile, Julia sees the swarm of crabs closing in. She grabs the gun and shoots as many as she can, but there are too many. Just when it seems hopeless, Cassie appears above the rock wall and reaches out her hand. Julia climbs as fast as she can despite her injured leg, and with Cassie's help, she makes it over. Together, they run toward the submarine. Ben is already on top of it, firing shots to distract the crabs. Julia and Cassie climb up while the swarm starts devouring Nao's body. Julia grabs the gun covering her kids as they climb inside. Once they're safe, she realizes the bullets are gone, so she throws the gun at the crabs and seals the hatch tight. Through the windows, they watch the swarm gather around the submarine. Suddenly, the ocean roars back. The family straps into their seats, holding hands as massive waves toss the submarine like a toy. Julia sees flashes of everything they've been through while Cassie vomits from the shaking. A piercing, high-pitched sound fills the submarine and the family passes out. When they wake up, the storm has passed. Carefully, they open the hatch and climb outside. To their shock, the submarine has landed in the middle of a ruined city. For the first time in a long while, they realize there's still hope, that survivors might be out there and life could begin again.